Hello everybody, my name is Erica and I'd like to welcome you to this Introduction to National Engineering Month webinar for National Engineering Month 2015. It's October as we speak and we're already starting to look forward to March. The purpose of tonight's webinar is to take you through a few highlights of last year and give you next steps in the game plan for this year, including some light comparison. First of all, I want to introduce you to my team member Alan, who is on board with me at Engineers Without Borders. We convened the National Engineering Month campaign in Ontario, and we're very much looking forward to working with you to put on a great campaign this year. So Alan's on the chat box there, and as I mentioned, feel free to enter your questions in that chat box. Alan can answer them for you real time. I do have you muted at this point, but we will take the mute off at the end to have some Q&A. So here's what I'd like to take you through. We're going to have a fairly short presentation tonight, just an overview of 2014, some stats, some highlights leading into our plan for 2015 and our Q&A. So first of all, how do we know that we had a successful campaign in 2014? Well, we have data to prove it. This is the good news. We've now been working on this campaign for the last 3 years, and we can see that the number of events was stalled out around 140, 142 in 2013. We made a huge jump up to 187 in 2014, which is just a great bump up. We'll get into the reasons for that bump up in a moment. Another key metric that we look at are the number of people we were able to engage in person. We were at 22,000 back in 2012. We got up to 25,000 in 2013 and managed to bump that up over 27,000 this year. So again, all of the numbers are climbing in the right direction. You see our traditional media, which is magazines and the newsprint, the Toronto Star supplement that we publish is the biggest part of that. 1.4 million people reached that way. We look at hits on the website. Again, that was up from last year. And the number of people, social media is a bit of a tricky one to measure, but we look at impressions via social media. So that's up a lot as well. So this number here, the engagement in person, is the part that you provided to us with your scorecard data from last year. And just to give a little bit more credit where credit is due with that really quality in-person engagement that we got through the events that you put on, you can see in 2013 on the right here, we were pretty steady around PEO around low 30s, OSET around 10. This is roughly the same as 2012. EWB in the mid-70s and other around 22. So that did shift around some going into this year, and that's what's responsible for the jump. First of all, a big jump in the other category that was mostly due to a young woman and a young engineer who came on board and organized a whole bunch of workshops with Girl Guides. That spelled the jump there. And PEO also upped your game. We're really grateful for all of the PEO chapters that organized for the first time in 2014. As you can see, you made a jump by 10 more events than in 2013. OSET also really upped their game through a collaborative thing that they did with the colleges. So they were able to really up their numbers. EWB stayed about the same. So this was a great year for OSET, PEO, and others. So kudos to all of those organizations that really managed to spark their engagement to another level during 2014. So that's great. In addition, we brought in a lot of other organizations. We know that there's great messaging and great organization, great practices going on out there inspiring our youth to consider engineering and engineering technology as a career, but they're sort of doing it in silos. So our goal with NEM is to bring everybody under one big umbrella. Again, I mentioned Girl Guides, Science Expo, the ESCO, the Engineering Students Societies Council. They've always been a partner of ours. We worked with IEEE some and the Fire Protection Students Association. So we really did continue to leverage like-minded organizations as well as work with our financial sponsors, the companies that give us the money to put on the programming, to really partner with them on a thought leadership level, not just a logos on t-shirts level. So as always, our approach has always been about the quality of the messaging. We've really done our homework on the research and said that what we need to really do is shape public perception about engineering and technology. It's not enough just to talk to each other about what we know. We really have to get good at explaining it to non-engineers, non-technical people, really have to know and value what we do in another way. We really want to break stereotypes, raise awareness, and how do we do that? It's all about the messages. So hopefully you recognize these messages and you've been using them, sort of working them into your storytelling, into your script that you use when you're speaking to the general public, to kids certainly, or potentially just to people at a family reunion, to talk about the diverse set of challenges that we're facing and how we need a diversity of thinkers, and there's a place for you in engineering and technology. That inclusive message is really important. Shaping the world around us. I love this one. I've talked to lots of groups of kids about this before. You say, hey, do you realize, what did the world look like 70 years ago or 50 years ago? And what does it look like today? What's different? And who made that difference? And what's it going to look like in 50 years? And I've had kids come up with some great answers to those questions. It's a really engaging conversation. The third one here, creativity and imagination, turning ideas into reality. Really doesn't matter which discipline you're in, what industry you work in, that one applies. And again, with that breaking the stereotypes objective, we know creativity and imagination are not really aspects or elements really associated with engineering. So that's a great one to mention. And the one about engineering and technology being essential to health, safety, and happiness. That is huge. I mean, I think that we all have examples in our everyday lives or possibly from our own jobs of examples where we're working toward taking care of the public. That's kind of what we're all about. So definitely encourage you to use that as it's something that everybody can relate to on a human level and an emotional level, as well as sort of an intellectual level. So here are our effective messaging. We're going to continue to use these well into National Engineering Month 2015. So along those lines, we provided you with a tool in 2014 to gauge the quality of your measurements. I know as engineers, as technical professionals, we really like to speak with data. We don't just say, oh, we think it's good enough, we think it's working. We really want to have the data to prove it. So here is an example of a tool where you can give it out and you can collect data immediately following your presentation to tell you whether the messages and whether your sort of your overall objectives are landing where they wanted to be. So I thought I'd share a couple of these because these were really good ones in my opinion. The question, what did you find interesting or exciting? This young person wrote, I liked the rush I had when the gears made the wheels move. So they were building a little electric vehicle. And I thought, that rush is really what we're after. We really want to spark that excitement and that inspiration from something that the kids just build themselves. They now understand this, you have some components, you have an idea, you work on it, you perfect it, and then it works. So someone here said, yes, they think that engineering and technology affect how healthy people are because it was so fun and interesting. Well, I really like the emphatic circle around this, because they really got the message there. Here's a message about being really resilient and continuing to try over and over again. Definitely important. Whenever you're innovating, you need to be resilient and keep trying. And this one at the bottom here, here's a 13-year-old girl who thinks that engineering and technology is fun, cool, and very interesting. So that's exactly what we're after. This is just exactly, really validates our messaging and shows that we're moving in the right direction. So there was another tool that we gave for the first time in NEM 2014, and here's some highlights from the scorecards. So these were, instead of the post-event report, we had you score yourselves on how well you think you did in some basic and advanced elements, as well as some bonus elements. So we've broken them down here by OSET, PEO, EWB, and other. We probably need to break other into a couple of its own categories. That's Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. They do our flagship events as well as our sponsorship drive. We had Girl Guides. We always have ESCO. Often we'll have different women in engineering groups will sometimes come aboard. So it's a really great cross-section of the broader community under that other category. But anyway, I want to give you this data with a bit of a grain of salt. The point is not to look at comparing one of these organizations to another, first of all, because these are massively average. They're sort of aggregate data. And second of all, because it's not the point to compete against each other. These are all self-scored and therefore, a little bit subjective given how people may have interpreted the criteria differently. The most important thing we want you to look at, we want you to know that we are using this data and we're listening, and we're really glad that you took the time to use this tool. And B, we're keen to have you use these tools again to see how you improve year over year. So that's something we're going to spend some time on and give you the benefit of this tool as a measurement method. So messaging, again, top of the line. We really wanted to give you that point that it's not just about engaging people or getting their attention or showing them a cool piece of technology. It's about putting it in context and giving it meaning that's really going to grab them. So here's the messaging score out of 20. Then the attendance, budget. These were our basics. We considered, involving the media so that we're not just, sort of doing this behind closed doors, just a select group of people. We're telling the story. We're leveraging what we're doing to the greatest audience possible. And then there was this category of improvement, if applicable. Our advanced elements, we thought then, were utilizing social media, collaboration with other organizations, engaging the participants, not just going through the motions, but really having something that's going to make sure that the light is on. Someone's home and the light is on. They're paying attention and they're really involved in what's happening. Promoting diversity is something we want to see across the board. So again, we felt that these were the really important things that we wanted all event organizers to be aware of and be working toward in their planning and their execution of their events. So those elements will stay the same. We will be utilizing scorecards again, and those elements will remain the same. The criteria will remain largely the same. We might play with the format because we got some feedback that the Excel sheets were a little bit cumbersome to edit. We're going to work on making that a smoother user interface. We also had a few bonus elements here. So again, I wanted to show you this data just to let you know that we are paying attention. We're very thankful that you took the time to fill out your scorecards, and we're really excited to see what happens when you have 2 years worth of data to look at as we get into this year's campaign. So another thing that's going to remain largely the same in 2015 is that we're going to continue to use social media. We know the kids are online. We know it's very important to reach them there. This is our website. Hopefully you're all very familiar with it. Have it bookmarked and go to it often to see what we've got there for you. Here's our Facebook page and our Twitter feed. Something we did have that was new for 2014 was the Instagram feed. We resurrected that from a previous year. And we're still figuring out exactly how Instagram works, but I'm told by the kids, as well as some of the online reading that I've done, some of the research, that Instagram is really important. So that's our plan. Utilize social media again in 2015. It looks as though the theme is going to stay the same, the Make a World of Difference. If you remember, that was new for 2014. That is set by Engineers Canada, and we will let you know as soon as we have confirmation of that, but it looks at this point as though the decision is going toward keeping it the same, Make a World of Difference. So you can bear that in mind in your theming and your planning. And here we just want to say that here are some offers for you. Obviously, the first one is we encourage you to apply for NEM funding. We have regular and innovation funding, and I'll get into a little more detail about that later in the call. Just by showing up on this webinar, you're taking the first step toward joining a community of outreach enthusiasts. So early on, we would do everything, all the PEO chapters together, all the OSET chapters together, all the Engineers Without Borders chapters together. We're working on bringing people together in a more holistic way because we all care about the same things. We all want to do good events, and we all want to have good messaging and good organization and good recruitment of volunteers. And we want to, engage the public and really inspire the kids. So to that end, we want to start really talking as one community that's working toward this common goal together within our individual organizations. So we encourage you to sign up for this newsletter that we've got going. That's sort of a little bit of what other organizers have figured out and what's working for them, and sort of brings you into a virtual conversation with them. Even if we can't afford to all fly and go see each other, we can communicate online. So that's another place that the online interaction piece is really important. Also, we want to give you support for your events. If you remember last year, we did a couple of webinars. We did the intro webinar, the same as this one, and then we also did one about social media. We did another one about measurement effectiveness. We are going to be creating a couple of new webinars this year and probably recycling some of that content as well to make sure that everyone's got access to it. The beauty of a webinar is it's available online after the fact, so people can continue to reference it as long as they need to. We're also available if you want to redesign a workshop. If there's something that you want to do, you can let us know. Measurement tools, messaging guidelines, those are all very important. Some of them will be emailed to you directly once you put in your funding application. Some of them need to be tailored especially for you. Others will be available on the website for you to download. So if you look, the website has been rearranged a little bit. We upgraded it this year to make it easier to browse via mobile, amongst other reasons. So if you look at the Get Involved spot and then go to the Professionals, you'll find everything you need there. We're calling it the Professionals portal. So that's where all of your funding applications and things are. So we asked last year, what is it that people want to know? This is what we heard back, that we want tips on how to do effective messaging, how to do promotion of the events, how to recruit volunteers for the events, and how to plan. So those are definitely themes we will bear in mind as we design our newsletter content and our webinars this year. We had a few other sort of one-off requests from individuals. So the letter from NEM supporting the activity, help us find a larger venue, help identify good guests and speakers, and actually provide a presence as NEM at their event. So these are all things that we would be more than happy to do. You just need to, I guess, get in touch with us. We can follow up with you individually, and if we start to see that there are lots of people wanting the same thing, then we can sort of move it online and offer it to the group at large. So absolutely regard us as here to support you. You are the customers. You're on the front lines. We want to enable you not just to do outreach, not just to do NEM events as part of a sort of a rote calendar that we've all sort of internalized, but actually because we want to do a great job. We want to really see what we're doing as an investment in the future and something that we're doing because we really want to create an impact. So we are really here for you and encourage you to reach out for us on that. I see a couple of questions coming through here, and maybe Alan, if you could jump on those, that would be great. We will be sending a copy to the participants, and when we get the webinars set, that will probably be January at some point, we will both send that out to you and have it available on the website. So sorry, I guess I just answered those two questions. So let's get down into the details here. We've decided that the applications will be due at the end of the day, Friday, November 28th. So we're giving you a little bit more breathing room as far as constructing your events, pulling them together. This is still the same. The maximum funding is still $700 per chapter. You can break that up and use that to fund multiple events if you want to. In fact, we recommend that. There are some chapters that funded 5 or 6 events on that $700 allowance, which we definitely encourage because it means you're reaching that many more people. And again, it cannot exceed, the funding that NEM provides cannot exceed 50% of your event budget, so you do need to find that, either match that from your chapter coffers or find other sources of funding. And we'd like one form for every event or activity. So I think that the rest of that is pretty straightforward. We did make a couple of changes that I'm going to point out to you now. We're now asking the target. We'd like you to specify target attendance for each demographic, so that makes it easier to tell when you go to do your scoring on your scorecard. You know what your target was, you know what your actual was, and you can score yourself on the difference. So that's just, earlier we were only asking you for who do you think is going to show up, which demographics. Now we're asking you to sort of up your game a little bit and tell us how many of each demographic is going to show up. Obviously, estimates are fine, and we just want to see you, sort of familiar with what works best. We also put a checkbox to specify whether it's a jointly held event or not. This is mostly pertaining to PEO and OSET, who tend to put on joint events. What happens there, when we see joint event, that automatically cuts your funding in half, because in theory the maximum 700, 350 of that would go to the PEO side, 350 of that would go to the OSET side. And we've sometimes had some confusion with who gets the check and who's spending the money and how does that work, and are we double counting the events? Obviously you can't each get 700 to run the same event. That's not the way it works. But we do encourage you to run joint events because we think that's a great way to sort of build this collaboration that we're talking about and reach additional audiences. So we just want to know if it's a jointly held event or not so that we know how to manage the funding. On the messaging elements that you're targeting, we've eliminated math and science in the real world. Engineering is math and science in the real world as a way to explain engineering to kids. The reason is that we found just in the research and the explanations that we've given and the experiences that we've had, that's not a very exciting way for them to understand, for kids especially to understand what it is that engineering is. I think to us as grown-ups it makes sense, but kids are very literal, and they think about, they picture themselves in a math class and they're sitting at their desk and they're solving a problem on a sheet with a pencil. They think about grown-ups in, solving math problems at their desk. They think that's engineering. So kids are a little bit literal, and we want to just take a step back from this as a key messaging element. Really talk more about the inclusivity and the ideas into reality and the shaping of the future and the innovation and creativity and all those other things. And then obviously you want to talk about math and science as the important educational elements that, that they'll need in order to study engineering. But we would say take a step back from saying engineering is math and science, because we think that tends to send a bit of a confusing message as to, what it actually is about. We've capped the number of T-shirts that we're going to subsidize. If you remember, we subsidize T-shirts NEM T-shirts at $3 per shirt. We've had some chapters that are asking for 150 and 200 T-shirts. Probably they're giving them out to every single kid. We think this is a great idea, but it's not sustainable as far as the number of chapters that are running events. We now have so many more events and so many more organizations asking us for T-shirts that in order to keep our campaign within sort of fiscal responsibility, we need to cap that. So we will allow up to 15 per event at $3 a shirt. And if you want more than that, we can make an arrangement that you can pay for them, but you'll still get them. You'll just need to include them in your side of the budget. So hopefully that makes sense and everyone understands the reasoning behind that. We've also included a campaign timeline, which I will show you at the end. We just thought that those were good reminders so everyone knows what's going on throughout the campaign. So into the innovation funding. This is largely the same as last year. I think we just wanted to provide you with a little bit more clarity because, again, some people were not 100% sure. What is it? What qualifies? What doesn't? How does this work? The applications are due at the same time, Friday, November 28th, although I guess they're due an hour earlier. End of day on Friday, November 28th. Innovation funding is for only new events. So if you're doing a bridge building event or a athletics or a school presentation, we would not see that qualifying unless it had an innovative component built into it. So I'm going to give you some examples. Successful applicants will have to commit, will have to give us their scorecard, same as a regular one. And what we want to do is just reflect the fact that we don't just keep doing the same thing year after year in engineering. We're always about innovation. We're always about looking toward the future and what's a better way to do things. Are we getting the impact or the return on our investment? So our outreach should be no different. So that's what we're getting at with this innovation funding. So a couple of different examples. A category of innovation that we see that we'd really like to promote is looking at that engineering not just as something that involves building or design necessarily, but that impacts people. So for example, if you wanted to talk about bridges, if you want to do your bridge building competition, but then make it innovative, you could add something else on to sort of emphasize, well, this affects the traffic flow through the town, and this is what it means on a day-to-day basis. This is how long it's going to take an ambulance to make it through the streets now that we have this bridge. Just as an example, because then you'd be tying into the health, safety, and happiness of the community. So anything that could put sort of a human element or a global social element, we would definitely encourage you to add that on to the sort of more basic, sort of design and building elements. And one example of this is the Water for the World workshops that Engineers Without Borders does. So look that up, definitely. It's really interesting. If you can just Google Water for the World and you'll see what they do. They have the kids build water filters, but they have a whole bunch of additional elements built into the lesson that help them understand the impact of water on the community and what that looks like. So the second category here is new partnerships or collaborations. Anytime you can bring people together, so one or more organizations with like-minded objectives. Note, this is bringing them together for the first time. That's what makes it innovative. So if you've always done a multi-stakeholder organized type event, we would encourage you to even up your game on that. Then that would be in the realm of innovation. So this is something for the first time, bringing people together. So that's what we're looking for there. So public space engagement. This is basically moving from the idea that an event is something that happens at sort of one specific point in time and then it's over. It's like a party. You set up beforehand and then you have the event and then it's over and you're finished and you have to clean up afterwards. It's once a year sort of thing. We want to move to this idea of developing assets that can be replicated and used over and over again. So for example, this is basically a booth. We call it booth in a box. So can you create sort of a package that's got a visual, it's got some kind of interactive element for folks to play with, and it's got a theme. Hopefully it's got a takeaway. Maybe you've got brochures, or maybe you've got business cards, maybe you've got pens, but we really want to see you go one step further with this. Give them something they can really touch and feel and understand as part of engineering, a demo of some sort. And this can be popped up in a mall, we popped up at a science fair, and you'll find that it can be used over and over again. So we're looking at developing assets rather than just looking through this purely through the paradigm of events. And so this is a recipe, I guess, that we want to develop that can be replicated. So the fourth category of innovation is promoting emerging or underrepresented disciplines of engineering or technology. Got a few examples here: software, biomedical, systems, and nano. We've got nothing against bridges. We think bridges are great. We know that's very popular. But like we said, there's more to engineering than bridges. And the kids that are sold on bridges have probably already had a chance to build one. So what else could we do? How could we add to that, either by building an additional activity onto the bridge building or by switching it up to try something new? That's what this category of innovation is really getting at. So we've got a few other questions to ask you to prompt yourself to understand whether your event is innovative or not. And I thought you might be interested in a few examples of innovation, successful innovation from 2014. So I would say, and we didn't plan it this way, but we sort of saw that the best innovations sort of separated themselves into three types. So we had creation of an engineering and technology booth. So this is that booth in a box thing that I was just telling you about, the idea being that we have this asset that can then be used over and over again. So the PEO Lakehead chapter did something really, really cool where they had a series of stations where people could try out different things. I think one was sort of like Operation, that kids game that buzzes when you touch the side of the patient's body. They had little games and demos, things like that, a series of them that people could try out, and that was a big hit. They set that up in a mall up north. So that's fantastic. Another example, the OSET Grand Valley chapter put together a button maker. So it was a little jig that allowed the kids to create their own little lapel button that they would wear afterwards. And this was a great opportunity for them to say, hey, this is a machine, it's a simple machine, and look, this, sometimes engineers work with that. You're designing your button, you're thinking about what you want to have on it, and now you're putting it together, and what do you think it should say on it, So that was pretty cool. So I will move on to tell you that the next type of innovation here was the University of Ottawa, NSOC. They developed an engineering family day. So they held this on campus in a big public auditorium, and they had a whole bunch of different organizations connected to the faculty, connected to the PEO chapter in town, connected to the biomedical club and the solar car and the science outreach camp and all kinds of different outreach organizations all under one roof. They invited families, which we thought was fun and innovative, and really sort of created a festive atmosphere, which is what we want to see. We want to make it fun, make it interesting, make it engaging as much as possible. So that was their innovation. Another new event that we saw was from PEO Oakville, Engineering for a Diverse World. So this was a bunch of different engineering activities going on in multiple rooms. And when the kids came, they got a passport, a little card that they could have stamped every time they went to a different spot and learned about a different type of engineering. So it had that sort of fun adventure aspect to it, as well as the message of diversity, which is obviously one of our top messaging guidelines. So they got, we felt that was a new and innovative way to engage kids. And then the third type of innovation was actually creating a new challenge, that it was a recipe for how to create a workshop. And what Rose Almond actually did in partnership with Girl Guide, she's an engineer and also a brown owl who works with brownies herself. She created this challenge. She designed the lesson. She wrote up the script. She wrote up the supplies list. She uploaded it all. She created tutoring tutorials for the organizers. This is how you set it up. This is what you need to do. This is how you build the thing. And here's how you inspire these Girl Guides to take their mission to Mars. So that one was fantastic. And because of the way she utilized not just a brand new workshop, but she put everything online, that meant that it had a reach beyond just the people that she organized. So she organized herself 30 workshops, and then there were about another 10 workshops that came about, sort of popped up organically all over the province and beyond, in fact. So that was pretty neat. So we thought that was sort of innovating on a couple of different levels there, and we really want to encourage that. So here's just a bit of a snapshot of some of the innovation. I mentioned the button maker. So this is actually my button here. I love engineering. I never take it off. My favorite. The kids really loved it too. Such a simple thing, but really, really fantastic. This was an innovation dinner that the Fire Prevention Society at Seneca, the students held there. And remember I said the mission to Mars? This is the Mars balloon rover here, being built by some Girl Scouts in Quebec who downloaded the workshop recipe off of the web. So some really cool stuff came out of innovations from last year. We don't need you to copy these innovations. In fact, they're now no longer innovations. We want you to think about something else. If you want to copy these innovations, I guess I should say, you can do that with regular funding. If you want innovation funding, it means you're breaking new ground again, and you're coming up with something that's even newer, above and beyond what was done in 2014. So hopefully that gives you a bit of clarity around innovation funding. Again, a little more explanation. Regular event funding, that's $700 per. It says per event, but that should be per chapter. As I mentioned, you can do multiple events with $700, payable in 2 installments. One before when you get your approval, and then one after when you return your scorecard. That's for regular events. Innovation funding, the amount actually depends on the applications received, and it depends on what you propose. We don't want to give you a cap because we don't want you to feel bound by that. If we get a really amazing idea that we think is super innovative and right down the alley of what we're looking for, we want to say, we will find the money to make it happen. So don't let your thinking be limited by that. Really be creative. Go for it. So in both cases, we will provide you with T-shirts, posters, and NEM merchandise. By the way, we don't know what the NEM item is going to be this year. Last year it was the Rubik's Cubes. The year before it was the robot pen. We will find out what it is. Again, that's set by Engineers Canada. We'll let you know as soon as we know. Either way, you do need to fill out a scorecard. Workshops and webinars are available. An outreach resource library and other support, as I mentioned, we're here for you on that. And the NEM Ontario Steering Committee, which is made up of our founding partners, they're the ones who are making the decisions, evaluating and awarding funding on the basis of the information provided by chapters. So I guess what we're getting at there is we can only award based on what you describe to us. So if you give us only only 5 words to tell us what you're doing, that's not really enough to go on. Whereas if you give us a little bit more of an explanation, you're more likely to get more of the funding. So that's about all I had to say about the funding, innovation or otherwise. Here is the timeline. Again, we put this on the bottom of the funding application. so you have it handy. We want you to have this to reference so everyone knows what's going on. Basically, we need to have the completed funding applications at the end of November. That's the next deadline that's coming up. In December, we will get together. The committee will review all of the applications. We will get back to you and let you know who's been approved, and we will get your first funding payment out shortly after that. We'll also let you know what webinars we're deciding. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to email that to you. We'll have that up on the website as well. So get in the habit of checking the website. That's a much easier way for us to update you than always emailing back and forth. I'm sure we all have enough emails in our inbox. The next sort of milestone after that is when you get your first funding check. That will definitely happen by the middle of January, so you can go ahead and start with your planning and reimbursing your volunteers if they're taking expenses ahead of time out of their own pockets. Similar to last year, the merchandise will be shipped mid-February to make sure you have it in time for your event. Everyone holds their events in March, and it's a big party, crazy, chaotic, wonderful time, and we encourage you to get your scorecards in as soon as possible. So one thing just to note, we will get you your scorecards a bit sooner this year than we did last year. It's got those checklists in it that help you organize yourself beforehand. We want to make sure that you're really using those, and we hope that they're useful. Make sure that you have those ahead of time. Send them to us as soon as your event is done, and we will get your second funding payment out to you. So if you get your scorecard into us by April 10th, you will get your check that following week because we're going to have a committee meeting then. Just a warning, if you don't get your scorecard in by April 10th, you will still get your funding, but you might have to wait a few more weeks after that, okay? And this is something that we did, again, last year. We want to continue to do it this year just to keep our books really clean. If you get your scorecard in before June 15th, you will get the second payment. If it's after June 15th, we will not be giving the second payment. So that is the deadline. Consider June 15th. That's the time that you really need to, it's the date you want to black out in your calendar. Make sure that we have your scorecard by then. Then we'll send you the rest of your funding and you'll be good to go. So thank you in advance for submitting your scorecards properly. We do really appreciate that. I think that's all I had. I wanted to let you know that these are your representatives on the National Engineering Month Ontario Steering Committee. There's myself, I'm Erica, there's my email address, team member Alan, who is on board to support me this year with the coordination. PEO people can also reach out to the chapter manager, that's Matt, the chapter coordinator, Julia, or their volunteer, George. I'm sure plenty of you know George, and I didn't put his email address up here, but I can get you in touch with him if you please. Michelle Malcolm Francis is sort of the go-to person on the OSET staff side, and Tara is the volunteer on OSET as well. So feel free to reach out to any of us with questions. These are the people who sort of attend to the details, and we're also looking at the big picture. So we'd be happy to chat with you further about what we're doing and the things that we're thinking. I guess I'll say one more thing. If you go to the NEM Ontario.ca website and look for the record of achievement for 2014, there's lots